Hey friends, Pastor David here with this week's Midweek Minute. So we are kind of in between sermon series right now. And so this past week, we took a look at the Transfiguration story in Luke chapter 9. And we talked about the fact that Jesus was doing something significant there. Actually, God was doing something significant through Jesus there. And that is that He is bringing to a completion the old covenant, the old story, and that Jesus from the mountaintop is on His way to Jerusalem to do that work, to complete the old covenant, and that now we live in a new covenant. We are new covenant people that have Jesus Christ as the standard for our living. We take our lead now from Jesus. We talked over the weekend about the fact that doesn't mean that the Old Covenant, what we might know as the Old Testament, doesn't have value or that it was wrong at some point in time. It just means that where we take our lead now is from New Covenant stories, New Covenant teachings that come from Jesus. We look at the Old Covenant for wonderful, inspirational stories that tell us the story of how we got to be where we are as people who follow Jesus. But we are New Covenant people that ground their living in who Jesus calls us to be, who Jesus has made us to be, and the kind of people that Jesus wants us to be living in the world. And what we talked about was, don't focus on what has been. Don't focus on the past. Focus on what Jesus is doing in the now. And what Jesus does in the now, because He is alive, because He is with us, and if we've opened our heart to Him by the power of the Holy Spirit, He is in us. Focus on that Jesus takes whatever we are in at the moment, whatever the darkness might be, whatever the joy might be, whatever everything in between those two might be. Jesus takes all of that and works it on purpose for the glory of God and for our good. Don't dwell on the past. Instead, center on what Jesus is doing in the now, because that's who we are. People who follow Jesus step by step, moment by moment. This coming weekend is the beginning of the season of Lent. We're going to be looking in the season of Lent at the prayer that Jesus taught us to pray. Disciples talked to Jesus once, watching Him pray and asking the question, Lord, would you teach us to pray? And in response to that question, Jesus gave us what we know as the Lord's Prayer. In that prayer, Jesus teaches us two things that prayer is and three things that we are to pray for. We'll be unpacking that in the season of Lent as we trace the steps of Jesus again to Jerusalem, to the cross, and ultimately to the empty tomb. Remember, this coming weekend, we spring forward in our schedule for life. So as old Yoda would say, spring forward you must, or late to church you will be. So I hope that you will remember that and plan to join us, either Saturday night at 6 o'clock or Sunday morning at 10:30, or at one of our online opportunities as well. Until then, have a great week. Keep looking up, and I'll see you next time.